Welcome to Codex, a history of video games. My name is Tyler Osby.
And I'm Mike Coletta.
And this week, we're getting into the history of the PlayStation 3. Mike, take it away.
All right, so development on the PlayStation 3 began in 2001 when Ken Kutaragi, the president of Sony Computer Entertainment, announced that Sony, Toshiba, and IBM would work together to develop the Cell microprocessor. And this is kind of the thing. Yeah, that was what surrounded the whole PlayStation project. And Shuhei Yoshida led a group of programmers within that Cell microprocessor team to explore next generation game creation. Whoa. Here comes the next gen. So
yes.
The development continued until around 2005. And there's not a lot of history in that time. They're just working away. I emailed Sony. I was like, can you give us your whole schedule and we'll go through it bit by bit? And they didn't want to do that. So,
oh, dang it.
Yeah. And at 2005.
They all got lost when Sony got hacked.
That's true. I forgot they got hacked. Who hasn't been hacked? I mean, it's 2019. If you haven't been hacked by now, you're a nobody. I'm sorry.
You must be unimportant.
Yeah, you must not be important because only important people get hacked. Anyway, at the time Sony began to develop launch titles. So anytime after 2005, they think development kind of stopped because that's when they started working on their own launch titles, their PlayStation exclusives, if you will. So the PlayStation 3 was first shown to the public on May 16th, 2005 at E3, because where else are you going to show something? You know, you
that's the place to do it.
So, I mean, when the Jaybird League Championships comes out, that's where we're going to premiere it at, is E3.
Yeah, that's
obviously.
where the finals are. World finals at E3.
Yeah. Although there was no functional version of the system there. I should make that moment. It was unveiled there, but there was a lot of secrecy around the project. Secrets. So pretty much one notable, wow, I can't speak or read. Notable difference between the prototype shown in 2005 and the later system shown a year later at E3 2006 is so they showed the consoles twice, once in 2005 at E3 and once in 2006 at E3. But that time, Sony took out a lot of stuff. So the 2005 prototype had 2 HDMI ports, 3 Ethernet ports, and 6 USB ports, which seems like extreme overkill, okay? Unless you want to charge 5 iPhones while your PlayStation's running, I don't see why you'd want to do that.
iPhones didn't exist then, so.
That's true. Oh, yeah, that's a good point. So there's no reason to have it. And then at E3 2006, that model, a year later, only had 1 HDMI port, 1 Ethernet port, and 4 USB ports. And it is widely perceived they did this to cut costs because it was overkill. But my question for you, Tyler, as a tech guy, you ready for it?
Mm-hmm.
It's pop quiz time. What would you do with 3 Ethernet ports? Don't you just need 1? That was my thought. I was confused.
Yeah, that's a great question. I guess to quote one of my favorite videos from around this time, or to paraphrase it, a video called "I Have 3 PS3s." The question is really, do I want to watch a Blu-ray DVD shop in the online marketplace or play one of the brand new games? The answer, of course, is yes, because I have 3 Ethernet ports.
And I can do all 3. So the launch model PS3 had 2 variations when it came out. It had a 20 gigabyte model priced at $499 US, which is pricey until you look at the second model, which was 60 gigabytes for the hard drive, an HDMI port, which is cool, so you can game in 1080p. They're like, oh, look at this. This is the new thing. It had a Wi-Fi card, flash card readers, and chrome trim with a silver logo for that sleek.
That's like what the Xbox did, too.
Oh, yeah. It was for that sleek I have money look. And this sold for $599, which is bananas, if you will.
Because the most expensive 360 at the time was $399, right?
Yeah, it's just so expensive. I remember hearing this when I was in school when this came out, because I think I had just graduated high school and I was going into college, and I'm like, hey, I guess I'm never owning a PS3. I guess I just have to come to terms with that because I can never afford that. And they're right. I never owned a PS3. That really happened. So these 2 launch models were said to release on November 11th, 2006 for Japan and November 17th, 2006 for North America and Europe. Then there were some changes because on September 6th, 2006, Sony announced that the PAL region, we talked about this before, the PAL region, which is how they do like marketing regions, that PlayStation 3 launch would be delayed until March 2007 because they had a shortage of materials used in the Blu-ray drive.
Interesting.
Oh no, yeah, you got to get the Blu-ray drive. Okay, this is the new thing. We're probably gonna end up having to talk about the Blu-ray versus HD DVD thing, but
Yes, let's just do a whole episode on that.
I know I would love that because some people bet on the wrong horse, like Tyler and I's friend. Okay, so the Tokyo Game Show on September 22nd, 2006 announced some cool things. Okay, this is 2 months before release. Keep in mind, the Sony PlayStation base model, that would be the 20 gigabyte system, would include an HDMI port on the 20 gigabyte system, but that Chrome trim, flash card reader, silver loco, Wi-Fi, those are gone. Those are not on it. They're just adding an HDMI port, and they did this because Kutaragi said HDMI compatible televisions are spreading faster than we expected. End quote.
That's a good move.
So it's good. It's a good move because you definitely want to have an HDMI port. You want people to game in 1080p because everyone wants the best, and if you can provide that in a system, why not? So, big important note about the launch price of the Japanese 20 gigabyte model was that it was reduced down 20%. So it ended up being $423 US or 49,980 yen. Now, that's the Japanese model. The US model was not cut in price. That was still $499 retail. So important to note with the 60 gigabyte Japanese model, and keep in mind we're talking about the Japanese ones because this was pretty interesting to me and I had no idea this was a thing. And we really exclusively focus on North America, and I thought, hey, let's change it up a little bit. This was an open pricing model, which means that shops, retailers determined how much they would charge for the system. Yeah, there was no MSRP. It was like, hey, which I think it is helpful, especially for the consumer, because it might drive some competition and prices might go down.
Yeah.
But I really think it's important to note they're not having any trouble selling any PS3s new. People want one, Yeah. So maybe the retailers just kind of all agreed on a price and they sold it for that. But at the Tokyo Game Show in 2006, that same one that announced all this stuff going on with the HDMI ports and stuff, they also showed 27 playable PS3 games running on final hardware. So that's pretty big because, as we know, you got to have some games to be a system.
And PS3 had games at launch, I guess.
They did have games at launch. So here now, Tyler's going to talk about the diminishing features of the PS3.
Yeah, this is a kind of an interesting thing about the PlayStation 3 because usually when a system comes out, it's bare bones, and if they make any revisions later, it's to like add features or make things better or whatever. The PS3 had a lot of revisions, and some of them made things better. A lot of them kind of removed features. And I think that's mainly because the launch PS3 had just a lot of features that people didn't really use. So I would say that by today's standards, even though it has a small hard drive, the 80 gigabyte PS3 is like the most fully featured PS3, like the launch, the $599 one. It had all the things. It had memory card readers. I don't know why. I never plugged a memory card into my PS3 ever. And it could read like, I think it was like compact flash, SD, memory stick, Pro, Duo, Mini, and maybe a couple other, maybe like smart media or something. There was like 4 or 5 different things that it could read. It had Wi-Fi. It had 4 USB ports. It had Super Audio CD support. Have you ever listened to a Super Audio CD, Mike?
No. What is a Super Audio
neither.
CD?
It was a new format around that time. I think it was about new. Sort of loosely based on DVD. The idea was like, it's better than a CD. It sounds super good. So if you listen to this, your Dark Side of the Moon is going to be way awesome. And I think probably people only bought Dark Side of the Moon on Super Audio CD. It was competing with DVD audio, which was more strictly based on the DVD standard. It doesn't matter. No one cared because CDs still sounded awesome. And also we're starting to move into like a digital download. iTunes is selling music at this point. So anyway, but you could play a Super Audio CD on your launch PS3. It had a function called OtherOS, which would be removed from later, like the slim and the super slim models of PlayStation 3s. But it would also get removed from every PlayStation 3 when you updated to a certain firmware update in about 2010. Which I'll get more into that because there's kind of an interesting sort of story that goes there.
Yeah, I will say, because there's a lot of stuff about PS3 I remember that changed.
Yeah.
Over time. It really adapted. That's like the big story here anyway.
It had PS2 backward compatibility. It's notable to say about how they achieved PS2 backward compatibility because that would change later on. So in the launch, 20 gigabyte and 60 gigabyte. Sorry, I said 80 gigabyte earlier being the most fully featured. I meant 60 gigabytes.
It's okay.
So in the launch 20 gigabyte and 60 gigabyte models, they actually included the full CPU and GPU from the PlayStation 2. Similar to how the PS2
inside of it?
Yeah, so they had all the hardware of the PS2 inside the PS3. That's the same way that the PS2 achieved PS1 backward compatibility, was by including basically the CPU from the original PlayStation was actually a useful part of the PS2 beyond just playing PS1 games. I think it controlled input and output and stuff too. So that's why later PS2s, they didn't get rid of that to cut costs, because that chip was actually really important to the PS2 itself. So anyway, the 20 gigabyte and 60 gigabyte models had near perfect PS2 compatibility. The 20 gigabyte model was like a cut down version of that. It didn't have Wi-Fi, like lost. No, it still had the 4 USB ports. It lost the memory card readers and stuff, but it did have OtherOS and PS2 support. Later models would start to chip away at this PS2 compatibility. So the 40 and 80 gigabyte models that came out later, that only had 2 USB ports, they kept the PS2's GPU, the graphics synthesizer, I think it's called, but they removed the CPU, and then they emulated that in software. So it could play a lot of PS2 games, not as many PS2 games as the launch PS3. So there were some compatibility issues.
Ooh, and that's going to come back and bite them later, I feel like.
Yeah. I remember the Ratchet and Clank series would play in like slow motion on my PS2 compatible 80 gigabyte PS3. It was a real bummer. By mid-2008, they removed PS2 compatibility completely by even removing the GPU. This was all cost-cutting measures, and they were like, what? Why are people playing old games on PS3? You should be playing new games. Or if you want to play old games, we'll sell them to you, which is weird because they would sell PS2 games on the PS3 store that would play on any PS3, and they were all fully software emulated. So I guess the PS3 was powerful enough to do it without the actual hardware, but I don't really know. I guess they just wanted to sell you things.
Probably. Yeah. I feel like it all comes down to money.
Yep. Those PS2s also lost Super Audio CD capability. Press F to pay respects. Oh, no. They lost 2 of their USB ports, and they lost the memory card readers. Honestly, the memory card readers, not a big deal. USB ports, though, was actually kind of a big deal for folks who played Rock Band, because unlike the Xbox 360 version of Rock Band, the wireless instruments for Rock Band on PlayStation 3 used a USB dongle, because they were the same wireless instruments used for the PS2 version of Rock Band, which obviously didn't have any sort of built-in wireless, so you had to plug in a dongle to the USB ports on the PS2. So if you only had 2 USB ports on your PS3, you were going to have to give up some guitars, or you're going to have to give up your drum set, or you're going to have to give up the microphone, which never had a wireless version, I don't think. So that's kind of a bummer.
You're going to have to kick people out of your band.
Yeah, or you could buy a USB hub also. If you just buy a USB hub, you'd be fine.
I was going to say, it sounds to me like Sony's trying to Yoko Ono everyone's Rock Band right now. That's what it sounds like to me.
Actually, now that I mention it with the USB hub, the game may have come with one, so maybe this is not even a problem for Rock Band players. I don't know. Anyway, after the 40 and 80 gigabyte models with no PS2 backward compatibility, they launched the PS3 Slim, which was way smaller, and they got rid of those fancy touch buttons that were on the PS3. There's like a power button and a eject button that they're just like touch on the regular PS3s. Well, they're just regular buttons on the PS3 Slim. They did add a couple of features on the Slim. It got HDMI CEC support, which basically means that you could control it if you had a TV that was compatible with CEC. Sony called the technology Bravia Sync. Other manufacturers call it different things, but it's all the same thing. You could control your PlayStation with your TV remote, which is kind of cool, and it all happened through HDMI.
Can we go back a second? And I want to say an opinion thing. Mm-hmm. I think I like actual buttons instead of the touch fancy buttons. And I say that because on my Xbox One, the touch fancy button's getting real finicky. You know what I mean? As it ages. And I'm really worried at some point I'm going to only be able to turn on my Xbox with my controller.
Yeah. And they got rid of that on the Xbox One X. Maybe on the S too. It's like an actual button now.
It's an actual button. Yeah. I just love a good button, you know?
Yeah,
you
me
gotta
too.
have a button.
Yep. I'll call that a win. They also added some extra audio options if you had some really super fancy Blu-rays, like different audio formats that could be output directly over HDMI to your receiver if you had a compatible receiver. This PS3 Slim got rid of the OtherOS functionality, which I will go into more detail after I talk about the PS3 Super Slim, which was even smaller and quieter than the Slim version. There is a version of the Super Slim that comes with just 12 gigabytes of storage. It was like a flash storage.
Whoa.
It was like $100 or something, or maybe it's $100 now. Maybe it was like $200 when it first came out. I think this was meant to be like this super cheap way to get into PS3 gaming. It should be noted that on all PS3s, the hard drives are user upgradable, and they don't need to be like special Sony hard drives. They take any serial ATA laptop hard drive, and you just pop a new one in there, format it, boom, good to go.
That was a big deal. I remember that being a really big deal because Xbox 360 had that weird looking hard drive that stuck on the top of it that was definitely theirs only.
Yeah,
so being able to change yours out.
Yeah, you had to buy like the proprietary Microsoft version, which came in only certain sizes and not nearly as big as you would want if you were upgrading your hard drive. So
now though, you can
cool.
Can't you with Xbox One and PS3, you can just attach with the USB a SSD drive if you want to, right?
Yeah, you can. You can attach it. You can use like external storage with both PS4 and Xbox One.
PS4, not PS3. What am I saying? Oh man, Tyler, keep going. You're doing great.
We're still in 2006 here. Well, Super Slim was like 2013. This was kind of the last ditch. Like, oh, the PS4 is coming in like a year. Here's a new kind of PS3. If you haven't bought one yet, it's cheaper. It's quieter. It has a weird sliding door on the top because it's a top loading, not like a slot loading DVD drive or Blu-ray drive.
Oh yeah,
so you have to like slide the top. It's like super weird.
I'm looking at pictures of it right now, by the way. If you want to buy your own Sony PlayStation 3 Super Slim, you can get one on eBay for $129.99, which isn't bad.
Oh, wow. No, that's not
pretty
bad.
cheap.
Yeah. So, yeah, I guess they weren't too concerned with, like, it felt kind of cheap with that weird, like, drive covering thing on the top. And when you press the eject button, it just, like, you could feel it, like, unhooking a spring, and it just, like, sprung open. And it was just weird, but kind of cool, but also probably very breakable.
Yeah, it sounds breakable.
So that's kind of the quick rundown of all the different models of PS3s. There were lots of different hard drive configurations and some like sort of minor differences between them. There were a lot of different bundles. There were a lot of different like special editions of PS3s. Like there's a Metal Gear Solid one and there's like a white one and that, like all kinds of cool stuff. But what I want to talk about now is the saga of OtherOS.
So are you going to get into what OtherOS actually is real quick?
Yes, I am.
Okay, good. Because, I'm confused by this. I felt lost.
Okay, so in the original fat PlayStation 3s, there existed an option called OtherOS. It was in the settings menu. You scroll down. It was like install OtherOS. What it would allow a user to do was install another operating system to the PS3, and you could basically use it like a desktop computer. They had to be like operating systems made for the PlayStation 3 because it runs on a cell processor. It's not like a traditional PC processor, so you couldn't like install Windows on it or anything. But there were a lot of different versions of Linux you could install on it, which was pretty neat. I think this was added for a couple of reasons. One, Sony was always talking about how powerful the PS3 was. They were like, it's a computer. It's so powerful. It's so powerful. And they were like, and you can use it as a computer if you install another operating system to it. So it's kind of advertising. This one is a little bit more unsubstantiated. I didn't have the time to like dig into actual import rules, but I think that there are some countries where importing an entertainment device has different taxes than importing like a computer. So by including this option, Sony could say, no, this isn't an entertainment thing. Don't charge us more taxes or tariffs or whatever. It's a computer because you can use it like a computer. So charge us less to bring it into your country. So that kind of let them do that. They sort of did that with the PS2. They released a hard drive and a Linux kit for the PS2, I think for a similar reason. They didn't really advertise it very much, but I think it was to kind of say, hey, it's a computer. Let us in your country. But what OtherOS would allow other operating systems to do was access 6 of the 7 synergistic processing units. That's like fancy marketing speak for like pieces of the cell processor. So one was still reserved for the actual system itself. These operating systems had no access to the graphics processing unit of the PS3. So you couldn't do any fancy games with it. You couldn't really do much more than like browse the web on it. Those processors were fairly powerful for the price. But Like there wasn't really a whole lot that you could do. It's not even useful for desktop applications. It was just kind of a slow computer. There were some niche stories of groups like the Air Force using them as a cluster for a supercomputer because they like the way the whatever calculations they were doing on it were like uniquely suited to the cell processor and 6 of those synergistic processing units. So that's kind of cool, I guess. But what it was useful for was hacking. There were vulnerabilities in the way that OtherOS worked that would kind of allow for custom firmware to be installed, which would kind of lead to piracy and stuff. Sony obviously didn't want that, and since OtherOS wasn't really a popular feature on the PS3, they opted to just cut it out of the slim and super slim versions, which wasn't a big deal. It's kind of a bummer, but ultimately not a big deal. What was a big deal was when they patched it out of every system. So if you upgraded to firmware, I think it was firmware 3.21 or 3.2 on your PS3 that you've been happily doing OtherOS on, you lost that functionality. Like, and that was the only thing that update did was just disable this functionality, which is kind of a bummer. And there was no way, like you could avoid updating, but eventually they wouldn't allow you to go online if you didn't update. So it was like Sony was sort of holding your gameplay hostage if you weren't like upgrading and deleting your OtherOS. This backfired on Sony pretty big because people actually sued because they were like, you're making my system worse. And this is like, I bought it for this. These are like, you just basically without my permission sort of took this thing away from me. And so people sued. And after like a lot of years and like appeals and back and forth, Sony ended up losing and they had to pay $65 to anybody who used OtherOS or bought a PS3 with the intention of using OtherOS. And you had to like have receipts and stuff. It was like kind of a pain to collect your $65 and it was like 10 years later, but they did end up losing that and they paid out. So that's very interesting.
Can we go back a second? Because I have a question for you. Mm-hmm. So when you say that you can use OtherOS to install custom firmware, is it kind of like when you jailbreak a phone?
Yes, it's exactly like that. It's very similar. In fact, so it's the person who coined the term jailbreaking for phones, George Hotz, was also very active in the PS3 hacking scene. So, yes, it's very similar to jailbreaking. In fact, it's done by the same person usually.
So my guess is that is it like the firmware that you could install? Because I know they did this on Xbox 360, which is why my brother's Xbox 360 got banned, was because he had someone hack the firmware so it would play burned games, like burned DVDs. It's the same kind of thing. That's what they mean by piracy. It's not like you're playing emulators. It's like you're straight up pirating games by copying the disc on a computer and then putting it in the disc tray and it works.
And those custom firmwares did allow things like emulators or like just sort of unauthorized applications that aren't just Sony made or Sony approved.
Like Jaybird.
Like Jaybird. That's how you would play Jaybird on a PS3 is because we never made like a fully PS3 compatible,
Because they were afraid it would sell too many copies.
Right.
Like people wouldn't want to play other games because they'd be like, oh, I have the access to Jaybird. Why would I play anything else?
Yep. So they removed OtherOS because they didn't want people to play Jaybird because then they would just stop playing other games.
That's pretty much the reason. I just want the listener to know how involved we are in the video game scene through our love of Jaybird.
Yep. That's right. So yeah, they got rid of it and they had to pay out to anybody who used it or wanted to use it, basically, if you could prove that you like had this intention.
Did you do this to your PS3?
I never did because it was not useful. It just wasn't that cool.
It sounds like unless you were really into hacking it so you could do this firmware, all you're doing is opening up a web browser, right? And just
pretty much.
Checking your email.
I'm pretty sure the PS3 had a web browser built in. So, I mean, it's like neat as a novelty of like, oh, look, my game console is also a computer, but ultimately not that cool, not that useful. So,
good to know.
Yep. But I do think it's interesting because they ended up having to pay people.
Yeah, man. I like that you should say bought a PS3 with the intention of using OtherOS. I bet you there were a lot of people out there that were like, yeah, I was going to do that for sure. give me $65 and I'll just buy a game. So you want to talk about the controller now? Ooh,
yeah.
It's going to get kind of funny too. I saw that picture you put on there. It looks so awful.
So the controller on the PlayStation 3 was Like the 360, the PS3 included wireless controllers. They connected with Bluetooth, and the PS3 could support up to 7 controllers at a time, even though there's only 4 LEDs on top of the controller for like telling you what number player you are. If you were past 4, if you were 5, 6, or 7, it would light up the 4th LED and then one of the other LEDs too to let you know which one you were. So that's neat. But unlike the 360, there were no official wired controllers. So you could plug a controller into the PS3, of course, to charge it, but every 6-axis and DualShock 3 was wireless. So that's neat.
Yeah, I do like that. I did think it was a problem, though. Wasn't it an issue with as that battery started to decay, naturally, you just have to buy a new controller?
Yeah, the battery was not user replaceable like the 360 controllers.
Yeah, that was the big issue I know with that. It was like, well, if your PlayStation... But, I mean, that's a lot of playtime with one controller to get to that point. So
yeah, I mean, I'm sure people wore their controllers down, but I wouldn't say it's like a huge deal or scandal.
Does the PS4 have a battery pack you can take in and out?
Nope.
It's still the same. Oh, well, I guess it wasn't that big a deal then if they kept it. That would be a thing. So
yeah. So the 6-axis and DualShock controllers were very, very similar to the PS2 and PS1 DualShock controllers. Main difference being that the triggers for L2 and R2 were now analog, like pull triggers kind of, like the Xbox had. It also had a PS button in the middle, which replaced the analog, like the toggle button on PS1 and PS2 controllers that like turn that light on and off, you know? You can press that, you go back to your PS3 menu, neato. It also, there were no official wired controllers, but it did support wired USB game controllers like you'd buy for a computer. So that's kind of cool too.
It's weird because isn't that PlayStation 3, and we're getting more conversational with this right now, but I feel like this is a thing I want to know about, is the PlayStation 3 is really hard to code for, like games. I feel like Sony's always been more difficult than an Xbox, because Xbox is straight up Windows platform. Like
it's just a PC for the most part. Yeah.
But it's weird then that they have peripherals that are way more open than Xbox was.
Yeah.
Like the hard drive thing, this controller thing, whereas Xbox was very much stuck in the way of, nope, you're using the stuff we give you and that's it.
Yeah, and the Xbox wireless was like a proprietary wireless protocol too. So you couldn't use it without, later they would make an adapter for it, but like you couldn't use it on a PC very easily. And like the PlayStation 3, PlayStation 4 controllers, it's just Bluetooth. You just Bluetooth it right to your PC, works great.
Yeah, that's so weird to me that like hardware-wise, PlayStation was great. For software-wise, Xbox was great for people like programming games for it.
Yeah.
It's so strange, but
it's very interesting.
Just an observation. Now we get to talk about this dope, the greatest controller of all time.
Yeah, let's do a little timeline here of PlayStation 3 controllers because there's some interesting stuff there. E3 2005, when they're showing off their 2 HDMI ports and their 3 Ethernet ports and their 6 USB ports, they also showed off the Boomerang.
This looks so ridiculous. This controller looks so insane.
It looks like a Boomerang. It's like a DualShock controller with all the buttons are sort of in the same spot that they are, but it's basically a half circle. You're gonna have to Google it, listener. Just Google PlayStation 3 Boomerang. It'll be the first thing that comes up. You'll know exactly what it is when you see it. It looks like a boomerang and it looks very uncomfortable.
Yeah, it looks like right after you're done gaming, you can throw it at a bird and then you can kill and eat that bird, much like a boomerang, and they'll come back to you. It's a hunting weapon. It's an elegant weapon for a more civilized age.
Indeed. This controller never came out. It's just what they showed at E3 in 2005. It's hilarious. What came out with the PlayStation 3 at launch was a controller called the 6-axis. Now, the 6-axis looked like a DualShock, but was not, because it did not have the dual vibrating motors. What it did have was accelerometers, similar to like the Wii remote, so it had some motion sensitivity there. The reason it didn't have rumble motors, well, Sony said the reason it didn't have rumble motors was because, like, man, if you try to put rumble motors in with your accelerometers, this is not going to work. And then Nintendo's like, yeah, but we did it. And so it was weird. But what really happened there was Sony was in a dispute over patents with another company that owned the DualShock, the patent to like DualShock rumbling. And so they said, they were like, we're not going to put rumble in this controller because what if we lose this lawsuit? It's going to be a real pain. So they released the 6-axis without rumble motors. It was very light. And then coincidentally, when all this litigation was over, Sony magically discovered the ability to put rumble motors in with the motion sensors. And
how did they do it?
I know.
That's fascinating.
They said it was impossible.
But they make, Sony, they make the impossible possible.
Impossible is their favorite kind of possible.
Oh, I want to add one thing for people who love dates, and want to know the dates. The last PlayStation model to be produced for the PlayStation 3 was that Super Slim, that 12 gigabyte Super Slim that Tyler talked about earlier. And that was on August 18th, 2013. So that's kind of the end of the life cycle of the PlayStation 3. Some people care about that, And I'm like,
yeah,
well
that's like 4 or 5 months before the launch of the PS4.
Yeah, so that was the last model to come out, the 12 gigabyte Super Slim, and you can get that in charcoal black, azurite blue, or garnet red. I love it when they don't want to just say red or blue. They got to add some fancy names to the top of it, like
azurite blue.
Yeah, azurite, azurite. Like
that's the thing in World of Warcraft right now. That's like what everybody's trying to get is their azurite gear.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Do you think it's related to the PlayStation 3 Super Slim? Probably.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, it's probably the exact same thing. You're finding different fragments of PlayStation 3s to power up your armor in
Blizzard
World of Warcraft.
actually bought all the extra models of the PS3 Super Slim, and if you get the full set of armor, they just send you one. They're like, just take this away from us. We don't want it anymore. All right.
Why did we buy these?
Yeah, why did we do this? So the next thing we're going to talk about is the PlayStation Network. And this was a free, initially, online service announced in 2006 for the PS3 and the PSP, the PlayStation Portable, which we'll talk about one day for sure. But the free service, it was completely free in 2006 to play games online with your friends, which is cool. And in fact, for a while, that was like the thing that PlayStation had over Xbox. It was a free online service, whereas Xbox Live you still had to pay for, as I recall.
Yep.
But it was definitely lacking in quality and this is completely opinion. This is Michael's opinion right now. I know with PlayStation 3, the weird thing was it didn't come with a headset, so you had to use you had to buy a separate Bluetooth headset and pair it to your system. So it was really kind of strange. But PlayStation Plus was announced at E3 in 2010. And PlayStation Plus was their subscription model service, much like Xbox Live, but it gave you some really weird stuff that, looking back, probably not worth it. And those benefits were the ability to have demos and game updates download automatically to your PlayStation 3, which is funny to think of because now that's like a given. You just turn your Xbox on, it starts
just
updating.
Standard.
Yeah, but that was like a big deal then.
I do think you still need to pay for it on PS4, like if you want it to happen while your thing's off.
Really?
I think it is still a paid thing. Yeah,
that's a weird thing to have people pay for. That should just be a thing that's included with it. But hey, it probably is on Xbox maybe too. I don't even know. We got to look into that. But subscribers would also get early or exclusive access to betas, game demos, or premium downloadable content. So and other stuff on the PlayStation Store. So that's a pretty good thing. Like everyone wants beta access, Yeah. Get on board that hype train, It might turn out like Anthem, but you never know. So North American users would also get a free subscription to Core, Q-O-R-E. Now, Core was an online magazine that was created by Sony, and it had interviews and like talk show kind of segments, if I recall. And it was something that no one ever asked for, is how I would describe it. It started in 2008, ended on April 10th, 2012, the day before my birthday, because they wanted to give me the sweetest present of all, which is apparently ending Core. I never used this service. I don't know anything about it. Tyler, you said you kind of knew a little bit about it.
The host I think it's hosted by Veronica Belmont. I think she's a great host for other like tech things. Yeah. I'm just familiar with her because I watch her other content, not because I watched Core.
I think it's just weird that Core, it's like they offered this service that no one really wanted, and then they were trying to sell it to you in PlayStation Plus, and everyone's like, oh, I'm good. Okay. Because now PlayStation Plus is much like Xbox Live, where it includes all the extra bells and whistles. Because you can get Xbox Live Silver, I think it's still called, where that's just you can watch Netflix. Congrats.
Yeah. High fives. And you can't play games online. And on PS4, you need it to play games online. On PS3, you can still play online for free.
Yeah, which was a big thing. So that was PlayStation. I should mention also the PlayStation Store came out at this time too. That was a big deal. You could start to download games and stuff, much like Xbox. But I think as far as still no party chat though, if I recall.
Yeah, I think there's still no party chat.
Yeah, that's the big thing about PlayStation was no party chat. So I think that pretty much covers the PlayStation 3. I know we went kind of fast in this episode.
There is one other thing that I kind of want to cover. I forgot to put in our notes, but
okay,
and it's
let's
related
talk
to
about it right
PlayStation Network. In 2011, April of 2011, there was a great PlayStation Network outage. For basically the whole month, you could not play games online on PlayStation 3.
Whoa.
Because they got hacked and like a whole bunch of people's personally identifiable information got leaked for 77 million accounts. So somebody stole all of that. So Sony, they were like shut down everything and they turned everything off for 23 days. While they investigated and figured their stuff out, basically. But you couldn't do anything that involved being online on a PS3. So if you're trying to play your games online, or if you're trying to buy content, trying to watch movies, whatever, nothing that it needed like the PlayStation Network services would work, which was crazy for 23 days. Like that's a long time.
Yeah, that's a big outage. I'm looking at the article right now on it, and I'm looking at Wikipedia, and it says Sony launched a welcome back campaign.
Yeah,
that allowed users who were PSN subscribers prior to April 20th to download 2 free PlayStation 3 titles and 2 free PlayStation Portable games. So that's actually at least they gave away. Oh, and they would also receive 30 free days of PlayStation Plus.
Yeah, I remember that now. I can't remember what games I downloaded.
Yeah, that's actually that. Oh, and just look at this. Sony then changed the PlayStation Network's license agreement to legally bar users from filing lawsuits and joining class action lawsuits without first trying to resolve the issues with an arbitrator. So they're like, "Oh, come on, don't sue us, come on, please." That is crazy. 23 days is a long time, especially for games. Like if Xbox Live was down for 23 days, you know how crushed I would be.
I know. Oh, I can tell you what games I downloaded because they're listed on this Wikipedia article. I got Wipeout HD and Little Big Planet for PS3, and I downloaded Mod Nation Racers, and I think Killzone Liberation for PSP.
Oh, Killzone.
Because there was that game was okay.
Yeah,
they had like a list of
series.
like 10 games for each platform that was like, yeah, pick one of these, I guess.
Oh, wow. That is pretty. I mean, at least they made it right. Good for them. They gave away games. That's the way to do it.
It was like right at around the time that Portal 2 had come out, and I was playing Portal 2 on my PlayStation 3, and I couldn't sync my trophies online. I was very sad.
Oh my gosh, we're going to talk about that actually in a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to talk about Portal because, I mean, I guess we're technically at the end here. I guess we can go into it, right? We can go into what are you playing? We're going to talk more about, we have some more stuff to talk about with the PlayStation 3. We're probably going to talk about it next week and include it in our exclusives talk, which is always a longer episode. So
right, and the PlayStation 3 had a lot of great exclusives. I know we've been poo-pooing the hardware a little bit here, but man, there were some good games, especially towards the end of its lifespan.
Oh yeah, and I mean, PlayStation's been known for their exclusives and how awesome they are, which has always bummed me out as like an Xbox guy because I can't have both. You know, you just got to pick. You can't choose. So
if you buy one, it's illegal to own the other. So.
It's true. They actually will come into your house and steal both of them. That's what they do to punish you. That's the video game police.
Yep.
VGPD, as they say.
VGPD.
So, I will say, Tyler, that can I go first in the what you've been playing segment?
Yeah.
Can you ask me what you've been playing so we canonically keep it the way we've always done it? I'll just act natural.
Hey, Mike. So we're about at the end of the episode today for PlayStation 3 stuff, but what you been playing?
Oh, that's so kind of you to ask, Tyler. What a nice thing to do, to talk to your friend about video games. I
try.
have played a couple games this week. I replayed Portal 1.
Nice.
I saw
Great
it,
choice.
and I was like, I should play this just again for funsies. And it was so fun. It was like, 2 hours to beat? 3 hours to beat?
Yeah, you can burn through it in an afternoon.
Yeah, it was quick. Played that. Really fun. I played this indie game. Full disclosure, I work on indie games, everyone. But I will tell you this game was good. It's called Where the Bees Make Honey. I played this game. It was like a Steam game. And it's like you're a girl and you're going through like your childhood and these like puzzle games where you rotate the puzzles and the map changes around you, and that's how you kind of solve the puzzles. It's really cool. It's a really fun game. Also super short. I think I'm halfway through it and I've only played for 44 minutes according to Steam. So it's very quick. But then also, I've been playing a lot of games this week. I downloaded Titanfall 2 because I got that for free on Games with Gold. And wow, what a fun single player game. Like, I am having so much fun playing that.
I need to
it's
play it
so
still.
good. It's like really well done. It's that perfect level of difficulty where it's not too hard, but you might get stuck in a spot for like 10 minutes and you'll figure it out and you'll be great. Combat's super fluid. The story is amazing. I can already tell I'm going to get some serious Iron Giant style feels at the end of this game. You know what I mean? I might get a little teary-eyed, you know? So, and then I've been playing a lot of Apex Legends. Not a lot of Destiny this week, as in none at all. I haven't played any
Destiny this week either. It's not a whole lot going on this week. You know, the next content drop's coming out soon, but it hasn't yet, and I kind of got everything I want, so it's perfect time to do some other stuff, you know?
Yeah, Tyler and I learned that shotgun we grinded for that we talked about is going to be nerfed away, so great.
Yeah, that's fun.
That's the way the video games.
That's the way it goes.
That's how video games work, but we still have it, and that's what's important, and we got the fun out of it.
And we have the memories of it.
The memories, like we should have a montage with Sarah McLachlan playing with you and I using our shotguns together. That's beautiful. Tyler, what have you been playing? And I specifically want to hear about what you've been watching someone play, because I saw your post yesterday, or her post yesterday on it, and I am very intrigued to hear about this game.
Yeah, so I haven't really been playing much myself. I've been working on a bunch of other, like, just sort of tech-related projects. But my SO, Kelly, has been playing through Kingdom Hearts games for the past, like, long time. But she just finished Kingdom Hearts 3D, Dream Drop Distance, the remade one for PS4. And now we're moving on. Oh, she also finished Fragmentary Passage. That one's just a couple hours long. And then we watched a recap video for the whole series of Kingdom Hearts that was like half an hour long, and it makes no sense. Storyline is... it makes no sense. It's like almost super close to being really good, but then you're just like, wait a minute, this doesn't make any sense. But we started Kingdom Hearts 3 last night. And it is very pretty, and it is definitely a Kingdom Hearts game. We didn't put a whole lot of time into it, so I'm not, this isn't like a review of it, but it definitely feels like a Kingdom Hearts game, and the story is just as ridiculous and out there as a Kingdom Hearts game, and it looks really, really good. It's beautiful. The game is, like, just overall very pretty.
Then I want to hear more about it when you get closer to finishing it then, because I specifically, I saw you go into Toy Story World, so I just got really excited about that, you know, and I never played these games because I never had a PlayStation. And that's why I kind of also sound like I'm asking a lot of questions this episode, listener, because I don't know a lot about PlayStation. But boy, oh boy, that game looks fun. I just think it's fun to jump into different Disney worlds and float between. It's really cool.
Yep.
So
it's super great. So you should watch a recap video, and then, you know, it is on Xbox. You can buy it.
I know. Maybe I'll do that instead of like going through the whole thing. I know I shouldn't, you know.
Yeah.
I shouldn't do that, but I should play the games all the way through. But I'm also inherently lazy. So I think I have to do it that way. I have to like watch the recap video and go from there. Now, Tyler, let's say someone wanted to ask us a question about said podcast. They would go email codexhistorypodcast@gmail.com, right?
Yes.
That's what they would do.
That is exactly where they would.
Also go to Twitter and find you on there. You're on Twitter.
I am, yes, at SneakerElf, ELPH.
And I am at Mecoletta, MECOLETTA. And that's where you can talk to us there. If you leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to us, that means the world to us. We don't tell anyone about the show. We just kind of do it and throw it out into the ether, because that's how much we love talking about this stuff. So with that, I think that's the episode today. And next week, we'll dive into some more places. There's probably some PlayStation 3 stuff we missed.
Yep.
We'll jump into there for sure. And then we'll jump into some really cool PlayStation 3 exclusives. Off the top of my head, The Last of Us comes to mind.
Yeah,
right?
Last of Us. We got Heavy Rain, Beyond Two Souls, which are, you know, of dubious quality, but there's a lot of other great.
Uncharted.
The trilogy is just awesome. So yeah, super excited.
We got some cool stuff to talk about next week. And thank you all so much for listening. And Tyler, can you say goodbye like I'm about to board a train and you're not going to see me ever again?
Goodbye.
This has been a Podaholics Comedy Network presentation. Podaholics.com